maybe Rohit, what are the big issues that are out there around access to medicine and patents that are being discussed and are out there on the table right now?
Well, thanks again for having us here at the panel, and thank you for doing this for everyone. Just to state, I think Representative McDermott's being a bit modest about the work he's doing today. He's been one of the few voices on Capitol Hill that's speaking out about some of the problems we're seeing with U.S. trade policy today, and the fact that this administration is basically right now at this moment in Singapore negotiating a trade agreement that essentially would consign half of the world's population to permanently higher drug prices. So this is a major issue, and we really commend the congressman for being one of the few voices that's actually trying to speak back on this issue. And part of the problem is you reach the end of the movie and you think to yourself, in a sense, perhaps this issue's been solved. But in fact, this is really an ongoing debate, and it's probably becoming more difficult and more thorny, especially with agreements like the Trans-Pacific Partnership. What we see today is the United States is negotiating a trade agreement with basically a range of countries in the Asia-Pacific region, which will permanently increase medicine prices by expanding monopoly protection for medicines and taking away the ability of governments, as you saw in South Africa and in India, to bring down medicine prices to protect public health. And for an organization like Doctors Without Borders, it means that we will be unable to provide treatment at an affordable price to our patients in the future, and we'll have to scale back our operations around the world. So this is a major concern today and one of the big flashpoints in the access to medicines debate.
Jamie, what do you see as other issues besides, moving on past this, past PEPFAR, past the AIDS drugs? You continue to work in these issues. What do you see as some of the examples that are out there right now about drugs that are being debated? What the price should be in one place versus another? What do you see?
Do I press this? Or, no, it's all voice. It's voice activated. Okay, great. I think if you, there continue to be problems, of course, with AIDS drugs, particularly with the newer AIDS drugs, and actually the creation of things like PEPFAR and the Global Fund created an incentive for people to patent drugs more broadly in the poorest countries now. So that continues to be a problem. There's continued pressure on the Global Fund and on PEPFAR to enforce patents in areas continually poor in poorer countries where enforcement levels were not as big as they used to be. But outside of that, if you look at cancer right now today, which is the big, I think that is the flashpoint for trade policy today. You're in the beginning of the film, not the end of the film. I mean, there's almost no access to new cancer drugs in developing countries. My wife here tonight takes a drug that she's stage 4 breast cancer patient. She takes a drug that cost a sticker price in the United States is $3,000 a week. She has insurance, so the price is only to the insurance company is $1,500 a week. There's almost no access to that drug, Herceptin, in developing countries, even though it's been known to be a real game changer for HER2-positive breast cancer patients for well over a decade. So we have a whole generation of women that just don't get access to the drug. There's a woman that came to a hearing last week from Florida. Her father-in-law lives in Egypt. He makes $300 a month. He's taken a drug called Nexavar, which costs $900 a week. He's gone through his entire life savings. She's there to talk to the Bayer representative at this hearing to ask him if they could do something so he doesn't have to sell his family business and they don't have to go into hock to keep him alive. Bayer said no as recently as today. So I think that across the world, there's this question about whether or not cancer is something that people that are poor that have cancer should get access to, and so that's one thing we really are really focused on. Another one is, if you look at the new Hep C drug that Gilead is charging, people are talking about it costs $1,000 a pill, $84,000 for treatment. Here's some simple math. You could eradicate. In theory, it's an infectious disease. You could try and eradicate hepatitis C. This is a pretty good drug. I think a really high percentage of the people that take it are actually cured with it. The problem is it's $84,000 per treatment. There's 3.2 million infected people in the United States. And even if you don't look at new infections, that's $269 billion. I'm going to repeat that. $269 billion would be the cost of treating 3.2 million people with an $84,000 person treatment. And there's 150 million people that don't live in the United States that have hepatitis C as well. So that's a crazy thing about the system. You've got really, really high prices on drugs, and not everyone that needs them gets it. So one of the things people are trying to do, and Joe Stiglitz, the economist, Congressman Sanders, a lot of MSF has been interested in this. We've been interested. A lot of people now are pushing for, and WHO is experimenting with this, delinking the cost of the drug from the cost of the R&D. And I think that's the way forward. The way forward is to have trade negotiations on research and development, on who pays for the development of drugs, but not on the price of drugs. Instead of trying to ratchet the price up, strengthen the monopolies, and just create all this sort of financial distress and actually kill people in a lot of cases or frustrate treatment objectives, have the drugs be priced like generics all the time, like aspirin. Treat everyone, have universal access to the drugs, but then build different systems for rewarding successful drug developers and paying for the kind of research the NIH does. And so that's the issues that we're working on.
But that, what you're talking about right there, means sort of revamping a lot of what the current system is, right? And it's going to mean government getting involved in research and development at a much higher level than they are.
Well, actually, if you look at vaccine development right now, the companies are they're paying for less than half of the cost of early phases and phase 4 trials on vaccines. The government's involved already pretty significantly, but it's not a question about having the government invent everything. It's a question of changing the incentives, like innovation inducement prizes, like the Sanders bill for AIDS would give $3 billion a year for people to develop new antiretroviral drugs as a cash reward. There's only been one antiretroviral drug per year for the past 27 years or so. So $3 billion a product is actually not, and that's just for the U.S. market, not the whole world. That's actually a very significant thing. It would be cheaper than the current system by far, but still, it would allow you to actually treat, instead of 40% of the HIV patients in the United States, a much higher percentage. So, but I would say also, if you think you can regulate big pharma, if you think you can regulate the companies, I have a different perspective. I think that the governments don't regulate big pharma. I think big pharma regulates the governments. I think it's the other way around. I don't think you can really regulate big pharma in the public interest. I think you have to blow up the system because it's not working. If you don't have enough data points, it's because you're not looking at the data. I'll stop it there.